So I have the skid steer here. I like to leverage my equipment as much as I can in every case possible. There's so much physical labor to do on a homestead that, you know, there's no sense in exhausting yourself doing anything if you don't have to, because then you save energy to do the next thing, or hurting yourself for that matter. I've hurt my back numerous times just doing work like this. So getting the forks right up to the machine when offloading boards saves just a whole bunch of unnecessary work if you have the equipment. So what I do is, unloading these boards, I flip it off onto the deck to get rid of sawdust. I'll flip it again, then flip it onto the forks like this. By doing that, I'm getting rid of sawdust. You know, not all of it, but most of this sawdust that you see here, which is good because we're about to stack and sticker these in the piles that they're going to get loaded into the kiln with. In the kiln, there's a significant breeze that's going to blow all that sawdust all over the kiln and make a big mess. Also, the sawdust is going to inhibit drying, because when a board dries, moisture comes to the surface of the board and then wicks off with a breeze. If you got all this sawdust sitting on top, it's going to inhibit that. So it's best to get as much off as you can. Actually, here's something we should note. This is kind of a bummer, but there really wasn't any way to avoid it. That check that we saw going vertically, that I thought wasn't there actually. Should have looked a little closer. Yeah, it's there. This crack actually goes pretty far back. And what I also like to do when I flip these boards around, I like to kind of test them. I want to know what I have. Now, if I hadn't, so when I knock this on the deck, you can see a giant check formed, cracked really far back. That sucks. Unfortunately, these boards are checked and there's really nothing to do about it. If I had not done that, the board may have stayed together and I might have thought that I had a good board, but during the drying process, this is weak. It would have just cracked anyway. So I like to kind of just test them, throw them on the deck, get rid of the sawdust, and see where they crack so I know what I have before I put them in the kiln. Alright, so the last board I like to do a little bit differently. So basically we get down to a point where we make our last cut. So basically I have this thing calibrated so that when I go down all the way, so it can't go down anymore, there's little bolt stops that allow me to set that. I set it so, because I'm cutting 4/4 boards, I set it so the last cut is exactly 1 inch off the deck. So when I make that last cut, when I go down all the way, it's going to be 1 inch off of this. So what I like to do on the last board is flip it over, and you'll see why. Because instead of getting, if I cut the other way, I would be getting the narrower, because at the bottom, that last board, a lot of times will have a little bit of the curvature of the log on here. So if we cut it the way it was, we'd end up with the board off the bottom of this cant. But what I do is the last one I flip it over, so I get like a little bit wider of a board. I take the wider material off what now is the bottom of this piece. So yeah, so I flip it over, and then also I want to make sure that all ends are supported. So you see now my end is supported there, and my other end is pretty well supported on the deck on the backside. So once I get there, I push it against the dogs, and now I'm ready to make my cut. Alright, so stacking and stickering. As you can see here, down below in front, we have, I don't know, maybe a dozen layers of these 4/4 boards, and they're all separated with 3/4 inch stickers. These guys. Okay, so these stickers, I cut these all out of the same red oak on the mill, and they're all 3/4 of an inch thick by 1.25 inches wide. So that's so I know that I always know which side is the 3/4, and I can set them down, and I'm not going to put them the wrong way. A lot of people do 3/4 by 3/4, and I don't like that. I think they're a little bit too flimsy, especially when you get really long. So what I'm doing here is I'm placing them every 16 inches on center. I mean, give or take. They're not perfect. But the reason for that is because it evenly supports the wood, gives it great support. So if it wasn't supported, if it was able to like kind of bow in the center, then that's the way your board dries, and then your board is going to be permanently bowed, and it could be useless. So you want to give it lots of support. But the main thing for the stickers is to create gaps between each of the layers of boards, and that allows air to flow through. So basically, as they dry, moisture comes to the surface of the boards, and then if air flows through, that air wicks that moisture away and evaporates it off the surfaces and takes it away into the air. And that's how the board dries. You want as much surface area to be exposed as possible. That's why we have these small little sticks here. And that way they dry as evenly as possible throughout the entire drying process. And that means the wood is all contracting at the same rate, so there's less cracking or checking that occurs. Checking occurs is from uneven drying. Because of the contraction of wood as it dries, if you have one area of wood that dries faster than another area, this area, let me just flip this up, this area will be shrinking faster than this area. So this area will stay wide, and this area will start getting narrower, and it's going to create a crack because of that. If it all dries together and contracts at the same rate, it won't crack. And that's what we're trying to do here. So, I'm going to put my stickers in at 16 inches, give or take. Oh, an important thing too for why I chose 16 inches here is because the carts that we have in the kiln, the skids that these stacks sit on are 16 inches on center. So that allows us to transfer all that weight straight down through all the stickers down directly onto the skids of the cart. All right, so I have again, using the machine to the best of my ability to reduce the amount of physical work as possible. I have put all the boards directly to the side so I can literally slide them right onto this stack. Get a little loud, so put those guys on. It's important to get your first board aligned perfectly and get all these stickers in the right place. Now that we got that set and we got our row started, now I can just drag them on and place them a lot easier. All right, first row is done, and now we're just going to continue the process. Put another row of stickers on, and then another row of boards, so on and so on. All right, so it's time to change the blade here, and that is because I can see this bearing spinning. There's another bearing on the other side, but I can't see it while I'm milling. When this bearing spins, you know it's time to change the blade, or when not.